Hey guys, I'm Drago and welcome to part 1 of redesigning the Nightmare animatronics. Now FNAF 4 is actually the one FNAF game that I haven't beaten all the way through. All the other games I have played Night 1s to 5, Night 6, done a bit of Night 7, but FNAF 4 is the only one I haven't done that on. And the reason why is the game actually terrifies me. Like, out of all the original Scott era FNAF games, FNAF 4 is the one that I just cannot play. The atmosphere of it, the way the gameplay works, it's actually terrifying to me. The only other games that have scared me that much is Help Wanted because of doing the same thing in VR, and Security Breach with the Endos because they tap into my fear. Like, I hate things that move when you don't look at them. But anyways, the one thing that I don't actually find scary about FNAF 4 is the animatronic designs themselves. They are just not scary to me. They look overly scary, if that makes sense. They look like they try too hard to be scary. And no hate to Scott there. Scott makes some of the best designs I've ever seen in games. But the FNAF 4 animatronics and Nightmare animatronics are just not there for me. So I thought it would be fun to redesign them myself, since that's something I like to do on this channel, is redesigning characters. Now, there are two ways you're going to look at FNAF 4. You've got Dream Theory, which is where you play as a small child, most likely crying child, and this is literally nightmares that you are dreaming these animatronics. Or you've got the theory, which I think now is the one that's most accepted, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm not that caught up on the lore. I've not really read the Tales books or anything, so I'm not that caught up. But you've got the one where they're actually blank mannequins, and it's just gas or something that's making people hallucinate the animatronics. That is all an experiment by William. So basically, that's the two ways you can look for FNAF 4, and I wanted to do designs that can sort of lean into both those ways. And you'll see what I mean as we get going. Starting off, of course, with Freddy himself. Honestly, out of all the Nightmare animatronic designs, Freddy is my least favourite. Which is ironic because Freddy is usually my favourite of the original gang. For me, it's mainly his face and his head. I just really don't like it. It just looks weird to me for some reason. I can't put my finger on it. I just don't like it. So I'm going very, very, very different here for the design. Now, elaborating on what I said on the intro about being able to lean into both the sort of theories, the dream theory and the experiment theory. My idea for these designs is to have them as a mix of organic and mechanical. And here's how that could fit into both theories. For experiment theory, I'm thinking of the same sort of thing as Twisted Ones, where they're actually an animatronic, they're a robot, but there's illusions, there's hallucinations that make them look like these big, horrible, twisted monsters. So while they look organic because of the illusions and the hallucinations, you can still see some of the mechanical parts. Now for dream theory, I'm thinking of it in terms of the mind of a child, how a child would look at them. A child would look at the animatronics and not think that is a robot. They would more likely think that is my favourite character Freddy, that is Bonnie, I like Bonnie. They would see a bear, a rabbit, they wouldn't see a robot. They don't really understand that. So if they were having a nightmare about these characters, they would likely see what they perceive as a bear or a rabbit. They wouldn't see a robot because they don't perceive the animatronics as robots. They perceive them as the animal they are portraying. However, at the same time, the likelihood that this child has seen a real life bear is quite low. So at the same time, they won't know what a bear looks like. So their perception of what a bear looks like will be based on what Freddy looks like. So while the nightmare will have a more organic form, fur and proper teeth and tongue and all that sort of thing, it will also still have the general build and shape of the animatronic that the child has seen, therefore mixing both organic and mechanical together. Oh, that was a long explanation, but hopefully that sort of tells you about my thought process here. Like I said, I really just want to make it fit both theories here, because I really don't know which one is the canon one anymore. I'm so confused about FNAF lore. I just enjoy playing the games and seeing the characters nowadays. Anyways, with Freddy, I was actually going to make him a lot bulkier like a bear, but he ended up being a lot more lanky. His limbs ended up a lot longer. And I decided to stick with this because, one, it's a lot more uncanny. You know, seeing a sort of more lanky, skinny bear is really unnatural. It's a lot more uncanny. It adds a bit more to that spooky vibe. But it can also nicely contrast him with Nightmare Fredbear, who's going to be much bigger, much chunkier. And of course, I will be doing Nightmare Fredbear in a later part. I didn't really actually have a solid idea. This was more me just making it up as I went along. I ended up with this huge smile, this hanging jaw, because I really wanted to show off the organic mouth and the teeth and all that. So that sort of naturally fell into place. The idea of the eyes being really small in the sockets sort of naturally occurred. I thought, again, it gives a better uncanny vibe, a better spooky vibe. And when it came to the skin, I kind of wanted it to look like the skin is stretching and tearing in places, so especially like on the limbs where like there are joints, so like on the elbow, have the skin actually broken apart, and that reveals the inner mechanism. So like how the animatronics have segmented parts for their arms, they have the bicep part and the forearm part. Of course, an organic being isn't like that, it's not separated. So here I'm having it look like that the skin actually tore to create that separation. Also, each Freddle, of course I still had to include the Freddles, they're like a main part of Nightmare Freddy. I made it so they are actually stretching out of the skin. They are physically attached to him, they're physically part of his skin, and they had to stretch out, stretching the skin and flesh with them. I imagine they can actually never detach from Freddy, unlike the canon ones, but they can just stretch the skin really far. So you'll find this really old Freddy, little mini Freddy, with like only arms and no legs, and it'll have this horrible stretching flesh to it. And if you follow it, then you're gonna find the big guy, or you don't want to find the big guy. But yeah, a lot of this really was improvising on the spot. Freddy himself took a long time to sketch because I was just really having to think about the design and the style I wanted to go for here, since this is the first one I did. But in the end, I got somewhere where I liked it. When it came to colouring, of course I wanted to stick with the classic Freddy colours. Again, this is going back to how I said that a child likely hasn't seen a real life bear and will likely only perceive Freddy as what he's seen the animatronic being. So I stuck with Freddy's original colours. I just dulled them down a little bit, desaturated them a little bit, had them feel a little bit more realistic and organic. And then I went on to texturing. I used my watercolour brush and the normal paintbrush. I put both on a stringy texture and I used that to create the theme of fur. I wanted them to have quite wry fur, quite thin, quite scraggy, not this really long, soft, luxurious stuff, the sort of thing that you would touch and it feels quite rough. So I made sure to use lots of little strokes and made sure to have my brush on really thin so that it could create that idea of scraggy fur. the areas of flesh, I really wanted the inner flesh to look quite stretched, and so I added areas of sort of paleness to it. When you stretch out skin and flesh, it becomes pale, and so I wanted to add that to make the flesh kind of look swollen and stretched and just like it's not getting proper blood flow or anything. And I really like the effect that made. All of this is to just give it a really, really uncanny vibe, really add to the spookiness, and just make it fit the context of being this big scary monster that the Nightmare Animatronics are meant to be, while not being overly done, while still having reasons for the design, rather than just big scary thing with big teeth, you know. Now, one of the reasons it took me so long to get this video out is because I made the canvas in the file for Nightmare Bonnie, and then it took me about 5 days to actually start drawing it, because I would open the canvas, I would stare at the blank canvas and I'd feel daunted. I just didn't know what to do for him. Like, I had an idea for him, but I just couldn't put it down on paper. But in the end, I sucked it up and I just got going, and eventually I got into the flow of things. So for Nightmare Bonnie, I wanted to lean more into a hare rather than a rabbit. And I had the idea that rather than the classic sort of animatronic muzzle, I wanted to have it like a skull of a rabbit or a hare and have that extending out. I couldn't really tell you why I had this idea specifically for Bonnie. All I could say is I thought it would look cool, and yeah. I also decided to have him sort of hunched over on his arms. Because he's one of the animatronics that appear in the door, imagine just opening the door and just having this massive hulking beast just taking up the entire doorway. That's what I wanted to go for. He ended up a lot bulkier than Freddy did, but I really like that because you don't imagine rabbits or hares being these big bulky monsters. You imagine them as being speedy and agile, and you don't really relate that to size. And so to just completely flip that on its head, it completely subverts someone's expectations, and it can be an absolute shock in the moment when you open that door and you see this thing for the first time. It can be quite terrifying. Just like Nightmare Freddy, I went with the same style with the skin and stuff, making it look stretched and broken, having a mix of mechanical parts and fleshy parts, just in general keeping the same style. Just like Freddy, I took Bonnie's original colours and just slightly dulled them, made them more realistic, more organic. It felt really weird to actually draw Bonnie as blue. If I'm going to draw Bonnie, it's usually FNAF 1 Bonnie, and FNAF 1 Bonnie is blue. We know he's meant to be blue, but whenever you do the lighting, he always turns out purple like in the actual game, and so it just felt so weird to do a Bonnie that is really purely blue. But you know what, I actually really like that colour palette for him. As used as I am to purple Bonnie, blue Bonnie is really nice as well. As for the bone, I wanted to make it really yellow because that makes it look a lot more aged, a lot more weathered, a lot more sort of decayed almost, which adds to the creepy vibe. Almost zombie-esque. And you know, zombies and horror, they kind of go hand in hand. As for the texturing, I did the same method as I did for Freddy, except I made it harder on myself because I forgot to lay down the entire base texture before doing the more detailed brush strokes. Because on Freddy, I had a bigger brush to start off with, and I just laid down a really rough texture over the whole body. I didn't do that for Bonnie, I went straight into the smaller brush strokes, and it took so long to do the fur for that reason. Oh, I tortured myself with it, honestly. Honestly, doing fur like this is just a lot of scribbling. Like, you think you're a professional artist, you think you've grown up, but then you'll just go right back to being 6 years old and scribbling on your paper again. And just like before, the last thing to do is some shading. Did this for Nightmare Freddy as well, but I went for a more red hue. You know, red sort of equals danger, but it could equal like blood and stuff. It fits the general vibe of the designs. When I'm lighting drawings like this, I'm not really doing a general overall environment light. I'm mainly shading to define areas a bit better, because there isn't a background, there isn't an environment, just to give it a bit more depth and make it look a bit more 3D. In general, when I'm shading these pieces though, I do go for the idea of the light source being on the top left. So the light is coming from the top left and the shadows will be on the bottom right. That's the sort of general idea I go for. But like I said, I don't fully go with a sort of refined set lighting because there's no environment to define that. So yeah, it's just to in general give it more depth, make it more 3D, stuff like that. And there we go, that is both Nightmare Freddy and Nightmare Bonnie redesigned. I really do like how both of them turned out. Even though I procrastinated these for days and days on end, for weeks on end, I still think it was worth it. And I'm looking forward to doing the other parts of the series. Next up will be Chica and Foxy. I'll be doing 2 of them per video. But do let me know in the comments down below what you think of my Nightmare Freddy and Nightmare Bonnie redesigns. Let me know if you have any ideas for future redesigns. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, maybe leave a like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. If you are watching this after I took my really long break, I really appreciate you sticking around. I'm sorry for being gone for so long, but I just kind of needed the rest, and there is an update video that I will link in the description below that you can go watch to get more of an idea on what happened and stuff. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!